So we are continuing a series here on the show where we are doing the state of the program for each of the 12 FBS teams in the state of Texas. And for this one, we're going west. We're going so far west that it's actually the morning still. Let's go to El Paso and talk to 600 ESPN's El Paso's Adrian Broaddus, the host of Miner Talk, one of the preeminent UTEP experts here in the state of Texas. Adrian, how are you?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. Excited to talk some UTEP football with you guys.
Absolutely. I love talking about these Miners, and I know that you are you're the guy who has the finger on the pulse of this program. And so I'll ask you in broad terms, a bit of a dangerous question. What is the state of the UTEP program right now?
Yeah, great question. And I think that a lot of people right now are trying to figure out where the state of the program currently is. I think that what you have to kind of understand with Dana Dimmel in his entering his fourth year of his 5-year contract, there's a lot of scrutiny on this coaching staff and this program. It's time to win for this UTEP football team. They've been 5-27 over the course of Dimmel's tenure, which I understand last year's season was totally, unlike any other that we've ever seen before. We've all heard that before, right? 3-5 is how they finished up the pandemic shortened season. Didn't get to play any home games toward their Conference USA stretch of the season. So the state of the program right now is, a lot of uncertainty about what the direction of this program is and where it's really headed. On one hand, you have a lot of talent on your roster, a lot of young talent like Gavin Hardison, their quarterback, their young running back in Deion Hankins, and an exceptional pass rusher in Praise Amehule. But on the other hand, just not a lot of wins under their belt under this tenure for this coaching staff. So a lot of uncertainty about this program right now, and it's a program that really is desperate to win some football games.
So, one thing I find interesting watching, UTEP football is I think when Dana Dimmel came on board, there was the idea of they wanted to establish what their identity was, especially offensively. They wanted to be a hard-nosed, physical running team. We'll throw when we need to throw, but we fundamentally want to win this thing in the trenches. We want to win this thing on the ground. Offensively, do you think that this team has established that identity, or do you think that they're still trying to figure out exactly what they are when they have the ball in their hands?
I still think that they're trying to figure things out. And I don't think they make that coaching change over the offseason if they didn't feel like they had a great grasp of their identity. I'm still trying to figure out why you decide to move on from offensive coordinator Mike Canales, bring in Dave Warner here in this program when the message was after the season that, hey, 3-5 is a step in the right direction. Things are getting better here at UTEP. That was the message coming from the program after the season, yet they turn around and fire both their offensive and defensive coordinators. So offensively, no, I don't think they're quite there yet. But I will say that Warner's philosophy now becoming the offensive coordinator, not the play caller, his philosophy is a run-oriented system, which could really suit UTEP. They've got Deion Hankins in the backfield. Quadres Wadley is expected back for the upcoming season, assuming that he could stay healthy. And they've also got Ronald Awat in their backfield, too, who's a nice, speedy running back. So if you're going to mix the pass in, you should do so in really strategic ways, because I love their receivers and Jacob Cowing and Justin Garrett. We just have not seen that balanced smash mouth attack that I guess everybody thought that would happen here at UTEP.
We're talking with Adrian Broaddus of 600 ESPN El Paso here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation at #TF Today. You mentioned the coordinator changes, and that happened on the defense as well. Mike Cox is gone. In comes Bradley Dave Pavedo, taking over a defense that I think they took a step forward last year. I mean, obviously a bit of a strange year, but I think they took a step forward, and I think that there's talent on this defensive side. Do you get the feeling that this UTEP defense, maybe if people aren't paying a ton of attention to UTEP, that this could be a Miners defense that surprises some people heading into 2021?
I think so, and I think it starts at the defensive line. As long as they could stay healthy, I really like the depth that they've built. Besides Praise Amehule, who is a very strong pass rusher, had 7 sacks, 9 pass breakups, but I love their 2 interior standouts. They've got Kelton Moss, Keenan Stewart, both of those guys are back this year, and they're fierce run stoppers. I think that the defense right now needs to maintain that four-man front and really needs to improve in their secondary. Last season, they were one of the worst teams in Conference USA for allowing passing yards against their against their coverage, and it just didn't click altogether. But they're hoping right now that the additions of graduate transfer Walter Neal Jr. from Kansas State could help out that secondary a little bit more, along with returning some guys like Justin Prince and Josh Caldwell. So we'll see if their secondary can kind of come together, but I like what they show so far from their defensive front.
I want to ask a little bit about recruiting, because obviously, UTEP is an interesting situation out there in beautiful El Paso, but you got to be going there to get there. It's a bit of a ways away. They are in the state of Texas in many ways without, I think, necessarily having all the benefits that come along with being in the state of Texas because they are so far out there. And yet I also know that there is a lot of pressure. Not pressure is probably the wrong word, but there is some people who want them to stay local and want them to make sure that they lock down the borders of the city and get the best players in El Paso every single year. And so how do you feel like they have balanced the need to obviously go out and get as much talent as you can with also, I don't want to say keeping the locals happy, but making sure that you're staying close to home and getting the guys that you have that home field advantage with in the door? How do you think that they're balancing that from a recruiting perspective?
That's a great question. I think that Dana Dimmel, when he first got here, he said that he wanted to maintain relationships with all the coaches across El Paso to try to recruit the best athletes they can locally. Now, I think you saw UTEP start things off doing exactly that. I mean, they go out and get Deion Hankins, who was highly sought after, not just here, even regionally by some colleges, but, across the country. A 3-star recruit, had offers from the likes of Arkansas, from the likes of Texas Tech, yet he decided to stay here at UTEP because he liked the local aspect of the team. And last season, you see one of the other premier running backs, Aaron Dumas, out of Americas. He decides and elects to go to New Mexico instead of staying home and playing for UTEP. So now it's kind of, a little bit different than what El Pasoans right here are used to, and seeing some of the best talent stay here locally. But I think Dimmel is trying to go after some guys out of the California ranks, whether it be the JUCO style, the JUCO route, or trying to get either grad transfers to come here to El Paso. Even Arizona has been an area that he's trying to tap into, from the JUCO ranks to high school athletes in Arizona. Still trying to pursue East Texas, trying to get their name out there. But this past year, Greg, was very challenging for UTEP to kind of recruit. I mean, you throw the pandemic in the mix, you throw the fact that this team has also been using their blue shirts left and right. Mm-hmm. This year was kind of a catch-up year for them, for the blue shirts. And Dana Dimmel believes that by next season, they'll be able to offer up to 20 guys actual scholarships. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now, is they're keeping some of the local guys here, but those local guys aren't necessarily your scholarship guys. They might be your blue shirts or walk-ons.
Yeah, I remember talking when I wrote a piece a couple of years ago out there in El Paso, speaking with the former coach, Sean Kugler. He mentioned that if you just get the toughest thing is just getting the kid on the plane to come to El Paso. Once you get them there, they feel like they've got a great shot of locking down any recruit in the nation. One more question for Adrian Broaddus of 600 ESPN El Paso, the host of Miner Talk, talking some UTEP football here. Dana Dimmel is entering. You mentioned entering his 4th year there at UTEP. He's 5-27 there with the Miners. Do they need a winning year? Do they need or at least a significant step forward for Dana Dimmel to keep his job into 2022? Is that seat getting hot there for Dana Dimmel?
Yes, I think it is, and I think there's a lot of breadcrumbs that you could point out that we've seen over the past year, really. I mean, the story that really caught my attention for the UTEP football program actually happened in the story of the UTEP men's basketball coach getting a contract extension. Athletic director Jim Center felt that Rodney Terry was deserving of a contract extension through the 2024 season before he left to Texas and became an assistant coach under Chris Beard. In that same piece, and when that story came out, athletic director Jim Centers said that he didn't feel like they were at the point where they could extend Dana Dimmel. And I think that was kind of the first real telltale sign that there's maybe some interest in moving on from Dimmel after this season, or maybe in the future. But one of the things that I'm really curious to see is how UTEP's athletic budget has been impacted by COVID-19. The athletic department, as it is, had to go through a ton of budget cuts, as well as many other programs across college football, and probably the majority of them as well. But I would say that, yes, there needs to be a significant improvement this year, whether it's 5 wins, 6 wins, whatever it may be. This program needs to show that it's making those strides in order for Dana Dimmel to stay for year 5, maybe get that possible extension. I would be interested if there was no extension after this season, and maybe they let him ride out his contract through his 5th year. But you look at the schedule that's ahead for UTEP, starting off on the road against New Mexico State, who didn't play a season this past fall. You look at going home against Bethune-Cookman, another FCS opponent, on the road against Boise, and then closing out non-conference play at home against New Mexico. Feels like a favorable start to the non-conference season for UTEP, and one that they should at least go 3-1, no doubt, by the end of, and going into Conference USA play. I think that there's going to be a lot of accountability that's going to be held against this coaching staff. I think that they will have to be responsible for either winning or losing for the rest of the season. And I think it's going to be a big wait and see approach to see how they decide to move forward or not move forward with this coaching staff.
He's Adrian Broaddus. He is from 600 ESPN El Paso and the host of Miner Talk, the preeminent UTEP podcast in America. I'm comfortable saying I haven't listened to every UTEP podcast, but I'm comfortable saying that's the best one. Adrian, fantastic stuff. Really appreciate your time, my friend, and take care out there in El Paso.
You guys too. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
There he goes, Adrian Broaddus. Great stuff.
Yeah.
About those UTEP Miners.